Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Herstory. That was a lovely view inside my dog's mouth. This is Digger. He's very grumpy. You're a very grumpy dog, aren't you? You're so grumpy. But here, me and Digger are here to talk. Yes, Digger, that's you. We're here to talk to you about Empress Matilda. Queen, monarch in her own right. Disputed leader. Okay, Digger's had enough. Troublemaker. She is nonetheless the first woman to make a claim to the English throne in her own right. So it's a story worth telling. As always, I consulted the incredible book She-Wolves by Helen Castor when I was writing this, and the subsequent episode that I'm going to do on Eleanor of Aquitaine, because their stories really need to be told together. And I also greatly enjoyed watching the documentary series again. So if you would like to learn more about England's She-Wolves before Elizabeth I, please do go and watch that and read the book, because it is a brilliant read and Helen is lovely and I love her. And yeah. So anyway, Matilda is born on the 7th of February 1102 at Sutton Courtenay in Oxfordshire. She is the daughter of King Henry I and his first wife, Queen Matilda of Scotland. That's right, mum's called Matilda as well. Her only legitimate sibling was her younger brother, William, but her father had 22 illegitimate children. From 1108 to 1109, between 1108 and 1109, Henry V, King of Germany, proposes marriage, and her dad, Henry I, thinks it's a great idea. In February 1110, little 8-year-old Matilda travels to Germany, and before she's crowned Queen of Germany, she has to stay there and live with her future mother-in-law and learn German language and culture and manners and the ways of government. The two of them are married in January 1114 when Matilda had just turned 12. That was the minimum age that you could get married then. After the wedding, her new husband caused a bit of political conflict by arresting several German princes, which outraged the Pope. So 1116, Matilda and her hubby march through the Alps and go to settle matters with the Pope. The Pope had fled by the time they reached Rome, and the couple was crowned Holy Roman Emperor and Holy Roman Empress at St. Peter's Basilica. Now, if you don't know, the Holy Roman Empire was freaking huge. It encompassed definitely Spain, definitely Italy, Germany, basically that whole bit from not France, but Spain right through to Italy. It was a massive territory to hold. So she's a very powerful lady at this point. Henry V, her husband, developed cancer and died on the 23rd of May, 1125. Now she's 23 and she's widowed. Matilda has the choice of either becoming a nun or remarrying. She gave up her royal estates in Germany and she went to Normandy. At this time, England's facing a little bit of a succession crisis. Little bro William has drowned in the sinking of the White Ship. Not good news. Henry I's second wife had borne no children. So Henry's next option is to leave the crown to one of his nephews living in France, Theobald of Blois, or to his daughter Matilda, which is pretty unprecedented at this point. Newly widowed Matilda was declared her dad's preferred heir in 1125, and in Christmas 1126, the barons of England gathered together at Westminster and swore Matilda as rightful heir to the throne. This is important. Remember this. Dad Henry chose Geoffrey of Anjou to be Matilda's second husband. She didn't really approve of this. He was 11 years younger than her and only the son of a count. She didn't think he was quite up to par with her royal status. They were married on the 17th of June, 1127. Their first son, Henry, was born on the 5th of March, 1133. Took them 6 years to have a baby. Didn't like each other very much. Who later becomes Henry II. And they later had 2 more sons. Henry I, her father, died in 1135, aged 67. Unexpectedly, he fell ill on a hunting expedition and he was taken back home and he died. Matilda and Geoffrey, who I seem to be referring to as Jeff, so that's what I'm going to do in my notes. I put Matilda and Jeff. They rushed from Anjou to Normandy and seized several key castles, including one of the main prizes, Argentan. However, Stephen of Blois, Matilda's cousin, was headed to London to seize control of the crown. Not good. Matilda's pregnant at this point, and Stephen's coming along. He is, if you remember the nephew from before, Theobald is the older brother, Stephen's the younger brother. He's coming along and saying, no, I'm going to take London while she's pregnant and in France. Nice guy. He heads to London, he seizes control of the crown, and with support of the English people, he is crowned on the 26th of December, 1135. However, older brother Theobald thought he should be king. Kind of understandable. So everybody wants to be king. It's a little bit reminiscent of William the Conqueror's situation. Matilda happens to be William the Conqueror's granddaughter. Just to put that into perspective. So Geoffrey of Anjou, Jeff, invaded Normandy twice in 1136, raiding and burning estates. Stephen went over to Normandy, battled and lost against Geoffrey's army 1 year later, and made a truce for peace in Normandy for 2,000 marks. One of Stephen's supporters, Robert of Gloucester, illegitimate son of Matilda's father, Henry I, declared an alliance to Matilda and declared war on Stephen in 1135. Robert of Gloucester is huge. He owns a lot of land. He's a very important man. Jeff invaded Normandy, and Matilda's uncle David, the King of Scots, invaded England from the north. So they're kind of coming at it in a two-pronged. Oh, it's gonna be another fun day of dogs barking. That's it. Sit down. Shut up. Where were we? Yes, so Jeff's invading Normandy, and Matilda's uncle David, King of the Scots, is invading from above, from the north. The Pope supported Stephen, obviously. He's a man. Matilda invaded England in the summer of 1139 and stayed with her stepmom Adeliza of Louvain at Arundel Castle. This is her dad's second wife. Robert of Gloucester gathers support for her while she's there. Stephen responds by seizing the castle and trapping Matilda inside. She's later released or escapes for reasons not quite unknown, not quite clear. And she heads southwest to Robert of Gloucester. By the end of the year, Matilda had control of the southwest of England and southern Wales. Come on, sit down, digger. And she's on a mission to regain all of it. On the 2nd of February 1141, at the Battle of Lincoln, Matilda's forces imprisoned Stephen in Bristol Castle, and Matilda was recognised as the rightful Queen Matilda I. On the 24th of June, just before her coronation at Westminster, the City of London rose up against her insufferable arrogance, and she and Geoff fled to Oxford. Stephen then had to be released by Matilda in exchange for Robert of Gloucester, who'd been captured. Not an ideal situation. He's released, he resumes his reign, and he even has a second coronation. Matilda spent the next 2 years fighting for the crown until finally Stephen trapped her in Oxford Castle, where he planned to starve her to death. Matilda wasn't having that though. Matilda and 3 knights escaped the castle in the dead of night, dressed in white against a snowstorm, and silently trudged right past Stephen's guards for 7 miles to safety. Amazing. After 5 years, Matilda finally gave up and returned to Normandy in 1148 and started to formulate a new plan. She might not be able to be Queen of England, but her son, Henry, could certainly become the next King of England. When Geoff died in 1151, their son Henry returned to England with a small army. Stephen named Henry his heir and successor, and he became Henry II when Stephen died in October 1154. Now, this gave rise to a lot of rumours that at some point Matilda had an affair with Stephen, and Henry was a product of that affair, and that's why Stephen so willingly said, yes, Henry, you can be my heir. But maybe it was because for years and years and years, this civil war had been raging on, the civil war they called the Anarchy. So much anarchy. The Anarchy had raged up. Can you not sit in front of the camera, please? Thank you. God, it's like worse than children. This anarchy had raged on, and maybe he just wanted a flipping end to it, you know? So anyway, Henry II becomes king when Stephen dies in October 1154. Matilda spent the rest of her life in Normandy, acting as her son's representative, and she died on the 10th of September 1167, aged 65. She was buried under the high altar at the Abbey of... I can't read my own writing. Beculion. So sorry, can't read that. With an epitaph reading, great by birth, greater by marriage, greatest in her offspring. Her tomb was destroyed in 1421, discovered and reburied in the church. Lost again after the church was destroyed by Napoleon. Her remains were then rediscovered in 1846 and buried in Rouen Cathedral, near Henry II, where they remain to this day. So, facts about Matilda. Matilda was never formally crowned queen, but she was given the title the Lady of the English. So, she was declared queen, but she never had a coronation. The people of London rose up and basically sent her packing. Because she didn't behave like a meek and weak and feeble woman. She conducted herself with like a king, and so because of that she was called insufferably arrogant and above her station, and people didn't like her for it. Matilda was involved in attempts to mediate between Henry II and Chancellor Thomas Becket when the two fell out in the 1170s. Will anyone rid me of this troublesome priest? Is supposedly the way it goes. And then, yeah, you know what happens next. When she died, she left her remaining wealth to the church, which I find very, very interesting because, well, everybody was religious then, but religion... No, people, the archbishops and the Pope, they really hadn't been on her side at all during this whole thing. So I find it intriguing. She must have been a deeply pious woman. Between 1139 and 1141, Matilda referred to herself as a femme sole, a woman acting alone to show her independence from good old Jeff. She had an imperial great seal created, and she had it made round like a king instead of oval like a queen, which is quite a bold statement. She issued 2 types of coins in her name during her time in England, which were used in southwest England and Wales. As I said before, she was the granddaughter of William the Conqueror, and that conquest had kind of rewritten the rules of succession. Succession belonged to whoever could fight for it and win it. She never took Geoffrey's name as Countess of Anjou. She always referred to herself as Empress Matilda or Queen Matilda. And Henry VII always referred to himself as Henry Fitz-Empress, Henry, son of the Empress. That was how deeply he loved his mama. So there we go. That's Matilda. That is Empress Matilda. What do you think? It's hard to sum up in such a short space of time how long this conflict went on for, and how much Matilda's supporters really fought for her and believed in her versus Stephen. And she came so close. She came so close to getting that crown that was near impossible for a woman to get at that point in time. But she tried so hard and she got so far, to quote Linkin Park. And in the end, she thought, sod it, if I can't be queen, then my son will be king. And that is exactly what she did. And that, guys, is Empress Matilda, daughter of a king, mother of a king, Empress of the Holy Roman Empire, and general all-round rad woman. Next week, we're going to be doing Eleanor of Aquitaine, who is Matilda's daughter-in-law, Henry II's wife. I have to do these 2 ladies together because their stories are so intrinsically linked. It's important that I tell their stories together. I hope you have enjoyed this week's episode of Herstory, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Please give us a like and a subscribe. Head over to my Patreon page, and also head over to my Facebook page, The Herstory Girls, where you will see I post the majority of my content there. So yeah, head on over and have a look and get voting in the polls for who you'd like to see, and I will see you next week. Bye.